Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, Final Inning Broadcast from the End. Let the Shadows Speak. Part 1, Opening Pitch. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, the final inning of the final game ever. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the last broadcast brought to you by Overbeam Enterprises. Overbeam, your light, your life. The voice boomed from every speaker in the dome, loud enough to rattle teeth and drown out the distant sobs. My daughter clutched my arm tighter, her small fingers trembling under 3 layers of synthetic fleece. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? The last game of baseball wasn't just ceremonial. It was a negotiation, or rather, a sentencing. The sky had gone black outside the dome, though it was only late afternoon. The synthetic lighting overhead buzzed with an eerie hum, casting the field in a too-perfect white that somehow made everything feel wrong, like a dream stage for a funeral. Everything about tonight was off. The air tasted too clean. The crowd was too quiet. And the players, well, they looked like they'd aged a decade in the last few hours. Let's recap quickly for those just joining us. After 2.5 hours of pitch-perfect defense from the visiting team, if you can call them that, we're down 1-0. The world's best hitters have yet to make contact with a single pitch. And our pitcher? Well, there is no pitcher. Just him, the entity. The broadcasters never used his name anymore. At first, they tried. Called him Sarnath 43B, as if putting a code to the horror made it less unholy. But after what happened to the sportscaster who kept mispronouncing it, well, let's just say we all learned not to poke the void. I turned to look at my daughter, Sophie. She was 9, hadn't cried once since the invasion, not even when her mother was taken during one of the first processing adjustments. That's what the drones called it. I didn't know what it meant. Still don't. Maybe it's better that way. Daddy, she whispered, voice barely audible above the crackling static of the overhead speakers. Are they going to eat us if we lose? My chest seized. I wanted to lie. God, I wanted to lie. But I just squeezed her hand and looked back toward the field. The visiting team didn't warm up, didn't stretch, didn't blink. They hadn't moved from the dugout in over 2 hours, yet none of them showed any signs of fatigue. Just 5 shimmering shapes, barely humanoid, draped in what looked like glistening membranes of oil. Only one played. The others watched, silently, eagerly. In contrast, our boys, if you could still call them that, looked broken. And stepping in a box now, we have Darnell Reyes. 27 years old, batting champion of 3 international leagues, and the only player to even foul tip a pitch in the last 8 innings. That tip, it cracked the bat clean in 2. Just vaporized it, actually. Reyes tapped the plate with a new alloy bat. I'd seen those being hauled in yesterday, reinforced carbon metal hybrid with shock diffusers in the grip. They called them Impact Survivables. Fancy name for something that probably wouldn't help. Across from him, the entity moved or uncoiled. From the mound, its upper limbs slithered skyward, impossibly long and thin, each joint bending the wrong way. Its faceless dome turned slowly toward home plate, and though it had no eyes, you knew it was watching, judging. The pitch was instantaneous. There was no wind-up, no shift, no motion, just a sound like air being torn in half. And then the ball, if you could still call it that, was in the catcher's glove. Strike 1. People didn't cheer anymore. They used to. When the first inning started, they clapped, waved flags, held up holograms of the players like this was still some kind of sport. By the 3rd inning, that faded into nervous coughing. By the 7th, people were praying. Now, just silence and the distant hiss of oxygen regulators. The second pitch came slower. 170 miles per hour, the screen read. Slower for him. Reyes swung and missed so hard he spun himself into the dirt. He stayed down for a long moment before pushing himself up with dead eyes. "Strike two," the announcer whispered. "No sponsor ads this time." I guess even the ad teams gave up. Reyes didn't even ready himself for the third pitch. He just stood there, bat resting on his shoulder like it weighed more than he did. The entity coiled again. There was no sound this time, just motion, and suddenly the bat was gone, splintered into vapor. Reyes collapsed in a heap at the plate. Not injured, just done. Sophie tugged my arm again. "Why do we have to play baseball with them?" I swallowed. "Because we're good at it. But they're better." I had no answer. That was the point, wasn't it? We thought baseball would save us, that they'd laugh at our primitive games and walk away. But they didn't. They liked it, learned it, twisted it. We offered the sport as a wager, for mercy. They took it as blood sport. One out, folks. And now, stepping into the box, Lee Jun, national hero, 3-time Olympic medalist, trained with orbital pitching simulators for 6 months in low gravity to prepare for tonight. This is what humanity has left. Sophie buried her face into my jacket. "Tell me when it's over," she mumbled. I didn't tell her it might never be. Part 2, the shadow behind home plate. And there she is, folks. Lee Jun, China's Iron Phoenix. No stranger to pressure, no stranger to eyes watching her every move. But tonight, the eyes watching come from beyond the stars. She stepped into the box like a soldier marching toward a funeral. Tall, confident, shoulders squared beneath her metallic red and gold uniform. Lee Jun carried herself with the poise of someone who had already died once before. The bat in her hands was etched with Mandarin script. Poetry, someone said. Something about honor, wind, or ghosts. It shimmered faintly under the artificial light, as if aware of what it was about to confront. Across from her, the entity shifted. It did not stretch or move like it had with Reyes. Instead, it opened. A ripple down the center of its torso pulsed, unfolded, and revealed another aperture. Wet, writhing. A second maw, or maybe just a second opinion. Sophie was holding her breath again. I had to nudge her shoulder just to remind her lungs still worked. "Who is she?" she whispered. "She won gold in Seoul, Tokyo, and the Lunar Games," I said. "She once hit a grand slam with 2 torn ligaments. She doesn't look scared. She is," I said, "but she's doing it anyway. That's what makes her strong." "First pitch, it's whoa. Did you catch that, Keith?" "Right. I don't know what I just saw." The ball seemed to split midair, split, shift, and recombine. And she didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Lee Jun had watched it sail past, strike one, but there was no panic. She had seen it, understood it. Something flickered in her eyes. A quiet challenge. The second pitch came harder. This time, it changed shape mid-flight, expanded like a blooming flower made of bone and metal, and snapped back into a sphere just as it crossed the plate. She swung. Contact. The crack echoed through the dome like a gunshot. The ball rocketed into right field, a screaming line drive, and for a fraction of a second, everyone stood, cheering, hoping. Then the wall opened. Not a glove, not a fielder, a wall. A section of the stadium simply deformed, its panels retracting like petals to reveal a wet cavity, and the ball vanished into it without ever touching ground. The silence after was longer than any pitch delay. People didn't sit down. They just sagged, folded into their seats like empty clothes. Lee Jun stood at first base for a moment, frozen. Her breath steamed in the cold, recycled air. Then she dropped her bat, removed her helmet, and walked back toward the dugout, her eyes glassy. She didn't speak to her teammates. She didn't look at anyone. Sophie started crying. It wasn't the loud, panicked sobbing I'd heard after the initial bombings. This was worse. It was soft, controlled. Her whole face shook, but no sound came out. "I want to go home," she said. "I know, baby," I said, brushing her bangs aside. "I know." She looked up at me. "Is mommy on their menu?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because somewhere deep inside I was starting to believe it. Well, folks, that's two down. I hate to say it, but if there's a time to pray, it's now. Or scream. Or both. Ron, I just got a feed from the refugee ARC stations orbiting Europa. They're watching. All of them. And they're silent. Let's hope silence doesn't become a universal language, Keith. Then came Alejandro Martel, the Dominican powerhouse. He was never supposed to be here. Martel had retired the year before the arrival, had a bum knee and a failing heart valve. But when the call went out for one last lineup of humanity's finest, he volunteered. He said if Earth was going to die, he wanted to go out swinging. They rebuilt his knee, gave him an artificial valve. Probably cost more than an entire nation's GDP to do it. Martel didn't walk to the plate. He charged it. Each step was defiant, rebellious, the last giant of a dying race. Martel takes his stance, shoulders broad, eyes locked in. And look at that grin, Keith. He knows he's probably going to die tonight, and he's still smiling. The entity didn't smile. The entity never smiled. It did, however, make a sound, a low vibration that hummed through the metal of the stands. My fillings buzzed. The floor rippled. My vision blurred. Sophie grabbed her ears. "It's talking," she said. "What's it saying?" She didn't answer. First pitch, Martel swung. Foul ball. Barely nicked it. The crowd erupted in a nervous, scattered cheer. People desperate to find anything to cheer for. Second pitch, Martel held off. Ball one. The third? That one didn't come from the mound. It came from the sky. A slit opened in the dome's ceiling, and from above dropped a ball that glowed red hot. It slammed into the dirt like a meteor and bounced toward Martel at impossible speed. He swung. Missed. Strike two. Jesus Christ, they're not even playing fair anymore. Did they ever? Martel stared into the outfield, and then he spit. Right onto the plate. Lifted the bat again. Fourth pitch. Normal. Straight. He swung with everything he had, and missed. He collapsed. No heartbeat. No movement. They didn't even send medical. Just a drone. It scooped him up and lifted him out through the same ceiling panel the ball had come through. 3 outs. End of the ninth. We'll be back, assuming we're allowed. Down in the stands, Sophie whispered something that didn't sound like English, or any language I knew. She repeated it, staring into the darkness just beyond the lights. "What did you say?" I asked. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "They're not just watching," she said. "They're inside the game." Part 3. The Ninth Light. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still with us, if you're still listening, we are now entering extra innings. Which is odd, Keith, because the home team had 3 outs. Odd is an understatement, Ron. According to every rule book I've ever read, this game should be over. Unless they change the rules. The scoreboard glitched, flickered, and then reset to inning 9.1. Home 0, visitors 1. But the 1 began to pulse. With every second, it grew brighter. And then something else appeared beneath it, another line of text. Selection begins. The camera didn't pan to the field. It panned to the crowd. Us. Sophie squeezed my arm. "Why is it looking at us?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I could do was stare at the projection, now floating above the pitcher's mound, displaying human silhouettes. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All marked with numbers. And then, one by one, the outlines turned red. Not randomly. Purposefully. One at a time. Folks, we're not entirely sure what we're seeing here. I'm being told the red silhouettes match audience members. The facial recognition feed is confirming identities, Ron. These are real people. Keith, my face is on there. Silence. Then, So is mine. Someone screamed in the upper section. A spotlight dropped from the ceiling and centered on a man in a gray hoodie. His mouth hung open. His hands trembled. And then he was gone. Not taken, just removed, like someone had edited him out of reality. Sophie grabbed my face and pulled me toward her, eyes wide and wet. "Daddy, that man just vanished." "I know, baby. What's happening?" "I don't know." And then I did. The menu. This was the menu. Before the game began, there were rumors about why they wanted a stadium this size, why they demanded the world's top athletes and packed hundreds of thousands of humans into a closed dome with no exit. It wasn't a game. It was a harvest. The game was the distraction. New update, folks. Our producers are saying the figures in red are being designated as consumables. Jesus, Keith. Consumables? It's what they're calling it, Ron. I'm just reading the prompt. The screen above the field glitched again, then displayed a word. One Sophie read aloud before I could stop her. "Ripened." She shivered. I pulled her closer. Across the field, a door opened beneath the bleachers. Something slithered through. I could only make out a shifting silhouette. Thin, long, gliding along the outer edge of the stadium like a shark beneath a pier. The red silhouettes on the scoreboard began blinking. A new voice came over the speakers. Not the broadcasters. Not a human. It was soft, musical, like a whisper filtered through static. "You have watched. You have feasted. Now you will feed. We only take those who ripen, and those who dream of escape." The crowd broke. People screamed. Some climbed the rails. Others threw food, bags, chairs, anything at the glowing dome above. None of it made a dent. It absorbed everything, like the sky itself was hungry too. I didn't move. Neither did Sophie. She was staring at the field again. "Daddy, the man in red is back." "What?" I looked, and she was right. One of the blinking silhouettes had returned, standing on second base, facing the entity. "We're receiving confirmation. That's not a player. That's Ron. That's one of the red-marked audience members." He was tall, shirtless, pale skin that pulsed with an internal glow. His face was expressionless, eyes hollow. He wasn't playing. He was offering himself. The entity unfolded. That's the only word I can use. Its limbs peeled back, revealing an inner structure like a cathedral made of bone and teeth. From within its chest, a single appendage extended and gently touched the man's forehead. He smiled and turned to dust. The scoreboard updated. Visitors, 2. Selection count, 001. And still, the game continued. The dugouts remained full of terrified athletes. The lights never dimmed. The entity never tired. Sophie pressed her face into my chest. "I don't want to ripen." "You won't," I whispered. She sniffled. "I had a dream last night about the shadows. They told me I tasted like glass and ash." "Is that bad?" I didn't know how to answer that. "Ron, if I can speak honestly for a moment." "You always can, Keith. I think this game isn't about winning. It's about time. Time to watch, to record, to analyze who breaks and how. You think this is research? I think this is hunger pretending to be curiosity." The camera panned again, this time not to the crowd, but to the tunnels. Another batter walked out. Not a human. Another of them. Not the entity. A different one. Its lower limbs dragged across the turf, leaving a trail of black ichor that sizzled as it touched the chalk baseline. In its hands, a bat. Not wood. Not metal. It looked like bone. Wait, are they sending a batter? That's not in the rules. There are no rules anymore, Keith. The new creature stepped into the box. The entity moved to pitch. Sophie gripped my sleeve again. "Daddy, they're playing against themselves." Part 4. Glass and Ash. I don't remember when I started crying. It must have been after the second substitute stepped up to bat. Another alien. Another warped reflection of what we once thought of as athletes. Limbs jointed in spirals, a spine like a chain of vertebrae made from obsidian blades, twitching in rhythm with some silent hymn. The pitch from the entity was slow, gentle even, like a father tossing a ball to his child. The batter hit it, not with violence, with reverence. That one's gone. Ron, I think we just watched them hit a home run off themselves. That makes 3 runs. All theirs. All effortless. Do you think it's symbolic? I think we're no longer the audience. We're the offering. The scoreboard reset again. Inning 9.2. Visitors 3. Humans null. Selection count 005. By the time I looked around again, at least 5 rows were empty. No blood. No bodies. Just absence. Whole family units gone. Erased. Except their voices. Somehow, I could still hear them. "Daddy," Sophie whispered. "There's someone inside my head." I turned to her sharply. "What do you mean?" She touched her temple. "A girl. She's singing. I don't understand the words, but I feel them. She says, 'They'll save me if I follow the line.'" "What line?" She turned, eyes scanning the glowing advertisements on the far wall of the stadium. And then she pointed. It wasn't a line at first, just a red shimmer under the seat rows, like a faulty wire short-circuiting. But when I squinted, I realized it moved, like a tendril of light crawling beneath the concrete. Toward us. No, toward Sophie. "Keith, something's happening to the dome." "You're right, Ron. It's flickering, thinning. The projection's failing, or is letting us see something we weren't supposed to." Overhead, the ceiling shimmered and peeled back like a wound. What lay above wasn't sky, or stars, or night. It was an eye. No, many eyes. Rotating, blinking independently, each larger than the entire stadium. And they watched, unblinking now. Sophie began to hum. The melody was soft, strange, like a lullaby hummed underwater. I felt it in my ribs before I heard it. It wasn't her voice. At least, not entirely. Something else was singing through her, and the line of red light under our feet pulsed in time. "Ron, the children in the lower stands, they're humming too. I don't like this, Keith. Not one bit. Some of the players are covering their ears. The sound's hurting them." On the field, 2 of the human players dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. I saw blood trickle from one's nose. The entity turned toward the stands. It tilted its head, and, for the first time, it spoke. Not aloud, not through speakers. Through Sophie. She went still, lips unmoving, but her voice, or something using her voice, filled the stadium. "The glass will break. The ash will feed. The song begins anew. The chosen will sing. The ripened will fall. The line divides the feast from the flame." And then she blinked, looked up at me, and smiled. It wasn't her smile. "Sophie," I asked. She didn't respond. She just stood up, quiet, calm, unblinking. Her hands dangled by her sides, fingers twitching in rhythmic pulses. The red light under our seats grew brighter. I grabbed her shoulders. "Sophie, stay with me. Look at me." Her lips parted, and in that awful, static-layered voice, she said, "You will forget me in the end." And then the smile vanished. She collapsed into my arms, breathing, but distant. Folks, I don't know what we're witnessing anymore. This is no longer sport. This is no longer ceremony. This is revelation. Ron, multiple broadcasters across the globe are going offline. I'm getting reports that entire satellite feeds are being replaced by static, or worse, by that song. Do you hear it now, Keith? I do, and I think it's changing us. The scoreboard now read, song stage selection count 013, and beneath it, initiate cull buffer. The air changed. It grew heavier, sharper, as if the atmosphere had been replaced by crushed glass. People around me began to scream again, but not in fear. In ecstasy. like something inside them had waited lifetimes to be freed. Some clawed their own faces. Others dropped to their knees and prayed to names I'd never heard. And all the while, Sophie hummed. Soft, steady. A verse in a hymn the stars themselves had memorized. From the dugout, the final player emerged. Not alien, not human, something in between. It wore a jersey, but its face shimmered with shifting features. Eyes, mouths, none in the right place. It walked like a man, breathed like a god. It stepped into the batter's box, and the entity bowed. Keith did just bow. It did. Who the hell is that? Ron, I think that's who this was for. Sophie opened her eyes again. She looked at the field, then at me, and in a voice that was suddenly hers again, she whispered, Daddy, I think that's me. Part 5. The Child in the Uniform. For a moment, the world stood still. No breath, no sound, just Sophie's words hanging in the air like a countdown that never finished. Daddy, I think that's me. I looked at the field, at the thing standing in the batter's box. It wasn't Sophie, not physically, but there was something familiar in the way it stood, the way it tilted its head. Its hands were too long, its legs jointed twice at the knees. Its skin shimmered like oil on fire. But when it turned toward the crowd, I swear to God, it had her eyes. Blue, wide, human. Ron, we're getting reports now from neuroscientists stationed at the Antarctic outpost Theta. Hold that thought, Keith, did you see that? The batter just pointed their bat into the crowd, right at section 33. Hold on. That's where the resonant spike was centered. Keith, that's where the girl is. The humming child. My heart stopped. Section 33. That was us. That was Sophie. The entity stepped off the mound for the first time since the game began. It didn't pace. It didn't adjust. It just stared, not at the batter, at Sophie, at my daughter. And then everything changed. The scoreboard glitched again. Text flickered, stuttered, and then new symbols appeared. Unforeseen variable detected. Multinode synchrony. Active. Error. Child point 33. Equal seed. I didn't understand any of it, but Sophie did. She whispered, it wasn't supposed to find me. I knelt beside her. What was it? She blinked slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper, not like before, not layered with static. Just her voice. Scared. Small. The part of me that never left them. The part they hid here. I was supposed to sleep forever, until the game ended, until the song finished. But now, I'm awake. The sky peeled again. Not like before. Not a shimmer. Not just eyes. It opened. A vertical rupture from horizon to horizon. Beyond it, not stars, not darkness, but memories. Cities. Forest oceans. Flashing. Collapsing. Repeating. Like a reel of Earth itself. Looped and rewound. And through it came the others. Not like the entities here. No, these were smaller, thinner, black as burnt shadows, moving fast, crawling across the dome's edges like thoughts through a cracked mind. Sophie shuddered. They're the recorders, she whispered. They keep the pattern clean. Ron, what are we looking at? I think they're editing us. All across the stadium, people began twitching, shuddering. Some stood and cheered for teams that didn't exist. Others wept while hugging strangers. A few stood completely still, eyes wide, mouths open, but empty. Rewritten, reshaped. A man beside us screamed. His whole face started shifting. Nose gone, eyes sliding too far apart. His screams became radio static. He turned to Sophie and bowed, then vanished. The batter on the field, Sophie's mirror, lifted the bat again. But this time, they didn't wait for a pitch. They ran, straight toward the mound. The entity didn't move, didn't resist. It simply extended one arm as if offering something invisible. They collided, and a shockwave blasted through the entire stadium. The scoreboard exploded. Lights flickered and died. The dome cracked. Actual cracks. Like someone took a chisel to the edge of the firmament and said, "Enough." And through it all, Sophie kept humming. But her melody shifted. It no longer sounded like surrender. It sounded like defiance. I held her as the wind whipped through the broken edges of the dome. "You're okay," I kept whispering. "You're here. You're okay." But she wasn't listening to me. She was listening to herself. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled something out. A stone, black, jagged, shaped like a sliver of shattered glass. I'd never seen it before. She held it to her lips, sang a single note, and the wind stopped. The shadows crawling the dome froze. The watchers beyond the sky blinked together. The entity on the mound folded into itself like a telescope collapsing in reverse. And the batter, her mirror, dropped the bat and spoke. "We return what was stolen. The ninth light remains. The child will choose the end." And then it vanished, like breath off a mirror. "Keith, I have no signal. Ron, neither do I. I think we just witnessed something that ends stories. Not just games, not just species, stories. Then let this be the last call. Let the child decide." Sophie stood. The red light beneath her faded. In its place, blue, a thin line tracing toward the field. She followed it. I started to stand, to grab her hand, but she stopped me. "It's okay," she said. "This is where I was meant to go." And she smiled. Her smile. She stepped onto the field. The crowd parted. No guards. No screams. Just breathless awe. The mound was empty. No pitcher. No batter. Just the plate. And Sophie. She picked up the bat, held it like she'd always known how, looked to the outfield, then to the sky, then to me, and mouthed 3 words: "Swing or stay." Part 6. Swing or stay? The plate shimmered beneath her shoes. Sophie stood still at the center of the broken field, the fractured dome glowing above like the cracked shell of an enormous egg. Stars, or what we once called stars, spun wildly beyond the rift in the sky, streaking like needles across the atmosphere. But down here, nothing moved. Not the players, not the crowd, not even the shadows. Only Sophie, and the bat in her hands. She didn't hold it like a child. She held it like an answer. "Keith, this is it." "Yes, Ron. This is the choice we were never supposed to reach." And yet, here we are. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The dome had cracked open to reveal something greater than the sky. A churning sea of colorless light, threads of time, or thought, weaving into and out of themselves like hair underwater. In that swirling chaos, I saw cities I didn't recognize. Creatures too large to comprehend. Entire star systems collapsing into silence. All of it happening inside the breach above. And at the heart of it, a shape, a throne made of kneeling bodies. And on it, a mirror. No king, no queen, just a mirrored surface. Endless, reflecting, waiting. Sophie stared up at it. The bat shimmered in her grip, now no longer wood or metal, but something glass-like, translucent, threaded with silver veins that pulsed with each heartbeat. Hers or the universe's, I couldn't tell. She turned her head slowly until her gaze locked with mine. Even across hundreds of feet, I felt it. Her eyes, still blue, still human, still hers. She mouthed it again, "Swing or stay." And then, for the first time since this began, she spoke aloud. "This world has known fear too long. I choose the swing." The field reacted first. The turf rippled like water hit by sound. The bases lifted into the air, white geometric plates twisting into symbols, hovering and rotating around her like satellites. The outfield lines peeled back, revealing circuitry beneath the grass. Patterns, glyphs, a massive spiral, hidden beneath the stadium for God knows how long, pulsed to life. The spiral led back to home plate, back to her, and then the ball appeared, not pitched, not thrown. It formed midair, a sphere of pure light, flickering with frames of memory. 1,000 human lives projected across its surface. Births, deaths, wars, laughter. The soul of the species. Condensed. Spinning. Sophie exhaled, drew the bat back, and swung. It wasn't fast. It wasn't strong. It wasn't even smooth. It was true. When the bat connected, the sound wasn't a crack. It was a note. A single tone, clear and full. As if every voice on earth had spoken one syllable in perfect unison. The ball didn't fly. It shattered. Into dust. Into sound. Into light. And from that light, everything stopped. The scoreboard went blank. The dome fully dissolved. The crowd froze. But Sophie remained standing. Bat lowered. Breathing. Smiling. Ron, where are we? Keith, I think we're still at the game. But the game is gone. Maybe it was never the game. Maybe it was her. From the empty mound, a figure rose. Not the entity, not a player. It looked like me, but wrong. Too tall, too smooth. As if someone sculpted my image out of softened glass and filled it with static. It walked toward her slowly. Sophie didn't flinch. When it reached her, it knelt. Then it cracked, down the center, and peeled open like a fruit. Inside, a seed, glowing, alive, floating upward. It hovered above her palms like a whisper held in cupped hands. She turned, faced us, faced me, and said, "No one else has to be food." The sky collapsed inward, not violently, not cruelly, like a curtain finally being drawn after the longest show in history. Beyond it, there was no fire, no death, only a clean, white void. Waiting, Sophie stepped forward, bat in one hand, seed in the other, and disappeared into the light. Keith, I know, Ron. It's over. It's beginning. In the silence that followed, the people in the stadium stood. No one spoke. No one ran. They simply waited. And then, like dawn over the sea, the light returned. But it was different, gentler, real. I found myself alone in the stands. The field empty. No dome, no scoreboard, no Sophie. Only the faint echo of a song I never learned, but somehow knew the words to. I looked up one last time, at the place where the breach had been, and I whispered, "Swing or stay." I stayed. Part 7. The broadcast that never ends. The silence stretched for days, or hours, or maybe no time at all. Time had stopped making sense the moment Sophie vanished into the light. What remained of the stadium was suggestion. The curve of the bleachers now just shadows on an infinite white horizon. The air didn't move. My heartbeat no longer echoed in my ears. I was floating but standing, dead but still perceiving. I don't know how long I stayed that way, until the voice came back. "Welcome back to the bottom of the ninth, ladies and gentlemen. It appears that we've yet to receive an update on the injury to the home team's leadoff hitter." My knees buckled. The broadcast, it was still playing. Somewhere, everywhere. The voice echoed out of nothing, clean and confident, the way it always had before the world fell apart. I turned slowly, searching for its source, and then I saw it. The booth, still intact, suspended in the air like a museum piece. 2 chairs, one microphone swinging gently as if touched by a breeze that no longer existed. And inside, me, Ron, I have to say, the energy in this stadium is like nothing I've ever felt before. You could cut the tension with a blade. You said it, Keith. It all comes down to this. The eyes of the galaxy are watching. I climbed the staircase. It didn't exist a moment ago, but now it led directly to the booth. My legs moved on their own. When I entered, neither of them turned. They just kept speaking, commentating. To no one. To everyone. Stepping up to the plate now. Wait, I don't recognize that uniform, Keith. Neither do I. But that bat looks familiar. They were talking about her. Still, as if it hadn't ended. As if she hadn't ended it. As if they hadn't even noticed. I walked around them, looked at their faces, and recoiled. They weren't human. Not anymore. Their mouths didn't move with the words. Their eyes were static screens, flickering with images of the game on loop. They bled something like ink from their noses, dripping into their coffee mugs. On the table, a monitor played the final inning. Again and again. But the outcome changed every time. In one, Sophie swung and missed. In another, she never stepped to the plate. In a third, she was replaced by something with no face at all. I reached toward the screen, touched it, and the world shifted. Suddenly, I was back in the stands. The first inning. The crowd was alive again, cheering, shouting, drinking. The scoreboard read, inning 1, score 0-0. But I knew what was coming. I remembered. I screamed. No one listened. The pitch came. 98 mph fastball. The batter missed. The crowd groaned. The commentary returned. And there's strike one to start the night, Keith. Indeed, Ron. It's going to be a long game. I tried to run, but there were no exits. I tried to wake up, but I wasn't asleep. I tried to find Sophie, but in this version, she wasn't here. Instead, there was a child 2 rows in front of me. Not her, but close. Another version? Another loop? She turned around, eyes glowing faint blue, and she whispered, "We keep playing because you keep watching." Second pitch, Keith. This one's high and tight. And that's strike 2. Just like before. The realization hit me like a train. This wasn't punishment. It was preservation. The broadcast wasn't looping because the story couldn't end. It looped because someone wanted it to keep going. An audience. Somewhere. Someone. Watching. And I was the new play-by-play. I turned around, and I was back in the booth. A third chair now waited. Empty. Waiting for me. I sat. The microphone warmed beneath my fingers. The stadium lights buzzed back to life. The score reset again. Ron, I think we got ourselves a real one tonight. You said it, Keith. Bottom of the ninth. No outs. And the fate of everything riding on one swing. I looked at the camera. Straight into the lens. Straight through the feed. To you, whoever's still watching. And I said, "Are you not entertained?" There was no answer. Just the low hum of the universe adjusting itself for another broadcast. A new child stepped to the plate. They looked back at me. Their eyes were green this time. They mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't need to. I knew the words. Same as always. Same as ever. Swing or stay. The broadcast never ends. It just finds new players, new crowds, new voices to fill the silence between innings. And somewhere, buried beneath all the replays and retellings, maybe the truth still lingers. Maybe Sophie did break the loop. But if you're still watching, maybe you didn't let it go. Part 8. To those still watching, they say endings bring peace, closure, a final score. But I've been sitting in this booth for what feels like 1,000 games, and I can tell you, that's a lie. There is no final inning, just the illusion of one. I used to believe Sophie had changed everything, that her swing, her choice, shattered the loop. I watched her dissolve into light, holding the seed of something pure, something ancient. It was hope, wasn't it? But hope only works if someone lets go. And you didn't. You kept watching. You are still watching. Even now. Ron, they're back in the box. Can you feel it? I can, Keith. Feels like deja vu, doesn't it? It always does. The child on the field this time is different. Could be a boy. Could be a girl. Might not be either. Might be you. They stand where Sophie once stood. Same bat. Same spiral of symbols beneath their feet. Same impossible lights flickering along the curve of the horizon, and the same voice reaches them. Soft, echoing, swing or stay. The crowd no longer screams. They murmur, as if reading from a script carved into their bones. They remember the endings, but none ever stay. None ever matter. I don't know who built this place anymore. I don't think it was the aliens. I don't think it was us either. I think it was made by the concept of endings itself. A place to stall them, stretch them, rewind them, hold them open like a wound that will never close. Somewhere in the far upper seats, I see faces I recognize. My wife, still wearing that blue coat from the day she vanished. Reyes, the batter who missed. Lee Jun, who almost made it. Martel, who smiled as he died. All of them staring, all of them waiting. Frozen not in time, but in purpose. And then I see her again. Sophie, not on the field, not in the stands. She stands beside me. No older, no younger, still humming, still barefoot, still glowing with that strange, quiet certainty. She turns and whispers, "Tell them the truth." So here it is, the truth. You never stopped the broadcast. You thought you were just listening, just observing. But watching is part of the game. You gave it life. You gave it audience. And as long as someone listens, it goes on. Bottom of the ninth, folks. No outs. Full count. Batters eyeing center field. You know what that means, Keith. We've been here before. We'll be here again. You hear the bat lift. You hear the breath before the swing. And you lean forward, don't you? Just a little, to see what happens next. Because maybe this time it ends. Maybe this time it breaks. But it won't. Because you're here, still watching, still listening, still feeding it. Sophie looks at me one last time. She smiles and begins to fade again. I try to hold her, but my hands pass through light. A whisper remains. End it. Turn it off. But you won't, will you? Crack. The swing. The hit. The crowd holds its breath. And the screen cuts to black. But only for a moment. Then, a voice. Warm. Familiar. Welcome back to the bottom of the ninth. The end. Or, your turn.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.